We've said that the electricity industry is a natural monopoly. Um, and so now we're going to talk about how the electricity industry is regulated if it is a natural monopoly. First, some electricity facts. In 2016, retail sales in the entire US were 1,400 terawatt hours. The total US electricity use was 4,000 terawatt hours. Recall scientific prefixes. Kilo is small k or 1,000. Mega is M, a million. Giga is G, a billion. And tera is T, a trillion. On average, residential consumers use about 4.4 megawatt hours of electricity in a year. Typical residential price for electricity is about 12 cents per kilowatt hour. The typical wholesale price for electricity is about 6 cents per kilowatt hour. These prices are equivalent to $120 per megawatt hour and $60 per megawatt hour. So agenda for this, the natural monopoly, what is it? And regulation of a natural monopoly. Profit maximizing firms, again, let's review this. Profit equals total revenue, or TR, minus total cost, TC. Profit equals, we can substitute total revenue for P times Q, or the price times the quantity, and then total cost we can substitute in C of Q, that's cost as a function of quantity. A monopolist's choice of quantity also affects the market price. So we need to then adjust the P times Q, the total revenue, to consider a monopolist market. So what we're doing is we're making price a function of quantity. That's where we get the Q in parentheses. In the above, where price is not a function of quantity, if we took the derivative with respect to quantity, then we would just be left with price. In the second, if we take the derivative with respect to quantity, we will have the derivative of price as a function of changes in quantity. So prices are changing with the quantity produced by the monopolist. Firms maximize profit by setting marginal revenue, or DTR over DQ, equal to marginal cost, DTC over DQ. Here we have it in graph form. Profit maximization for unregulated monopolies looks like the following. So firms are going to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Not a surprise. Natural monopolies occur when one firm can provide all services at the lowest cost. So natural monopoly is an industry where the cost structure is such that the lowest long-run average cost of production is achieved with a single firm. This usually occurs when there are high fixed costs, like in electricity generation, electricity distribution as well. Oil pipelines and piped water provision are natural monopolies. This makes sense because you can imagine it's cheaper to produce one large transmission line than hundreds of small ones. In the absence of regulation, the monopolist will set marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, which results in deadweight loss. Here's an example of a natural monopoly. Maybe they have fixed marginal costs or constant marginal costs, but their average costs are declining in their quantity produced. What happens when we have a natural monopoly? We only want one firm supplying the entire market, but we do not want it to exercise market power. Why? We want one firm supplying the market because that's the cheapest way to provide the service, but we do not want to let that firm exercise market power. So there's two common solutions. The government provides the services, so the government acts as a monopoly, frequently results in prices below marginal cost. So the government is charging prices below their marginal cost. And then private service provision with regulators setting prices. So this is the alternative. You let firms do it, but you regulate them. The firm doing the provision is often called a public utility. Public utility regulators generally have three objectives. They want to recover utility costs. They want to cover the costs of producing the electricity or providing water. Two, they provide signals for efficient service consumption. They want to send information to the consumers so that the consumers aren't using too much. And then 3, allocate costs fairly across consumers. Their tariff or pricing options include a single fixed charge. Total prices don't vary with consumption. So for example, $30 per month. Maybe you pay $30 per month for all the electricity you consume. This is obviously not the best way to do this, but it's one option. 2, a volumetric charge, consumption meter required. Total price is a function of consumption. So this might be 10 cents per kilowatt hour used. This is slightly better than the first option, but a combination of fixed and volumetric charges is probably preferable. By itself, either a fixed charge or a pure volumetric charge cause deadweight loss. With only a fixed charge, users consume past the point where marginal costs equal marginal benefits. With only a volumetric charge, users stop consuming when average cost equals marginal benefits, or below the quantity where marginal costs equal marginal benefits. So in either case, consumers are using too little or too much. Neither type of charge changes with wholesale prices. So remember that either of these charges is not changing with the change in wholesale prices. Neither type of charge will send efficient price signals. So consumers aren't responding to peak demand or high load periods. How are retail prices typically set? Regulators specify an allowed rate of return on capital for the firm, and then calculate the price that would provide such a rate of return. Okay, so what does this mean? Suppose a natural monopoly provides N services. This would be service to different customer types like residential, commercial, and industrial. So they need to choose a price for each household service, PI, such that for all services, I equals 1 through N, the price times the quantity equals the expenses that the firm incurs plus S times B. And QI is a quantity of service I, so the quantity of electricity provided to household I or commercial or industrial user I. S is the allowed rate of return, which is a fraction, and then B is the rate base, the measure of the firm's investment. So they're basically getting the expenses, which would be things like labor costs and input costs, like the cost of coal or natural gas. And then B is going to be the amount that they've invested, essentially their capital expenditures or their fixed costs. And then S is a fraction of their fixed costs. And they want to be able to generate revenue to cover their fixed costs. And that's what S is doing here. Every year they're going to get some fraction of their fixed costs back from the consumers. And of course, firms want S to be as large as possible. The government wants S to be as small as possible. So S and B are vigorously debated during rate cases, which anyone can attend, and they happen about once a year. The potential problems with a rate of return regulation: firms have little incentive to reduce costs. Any cost reductions will just mean that their prices are lower. So lower investments mean that they get lower prices. Managers have no incentive to exert effort to reduce costs or become more efficient. Why? Because the higher they have to go to these rate cases and show their books and show that their costs are high, which means that they can charge higher prices. If they reduce their costs and they show their books and their costs are lower, then they charge lower prices. The only way to increase profits is to expand the rate base, B, in other words, build more stuff. So they have an incentive to invest in too much capital in order to increase the retail prices. So here's an example. Suppose the regulator is asking an electricity company to improve the reliability of its service. The prices will be adjusted to reflect the additional costs for more reliable service. The firm has two alternatives. They can, 1, hire 10 employees to repair lines quicker, and the cost is $100,000 per employee. Alternatively, they can build a new power line. The cost is $20 million. The interest rate for borrowing is 10%. The rate of return regulation allows the firm a return of 12% on investment. What will the firm do? Well, clearly, they don't get any return on their additional employees. They only get additional return on their cost of capital, and so they're going to build a new power line instead of hiring more people. So in conclusion, electricity markets are natural monopolies, and the government has come up with a lot of ways to regulate them as such. But in recent years, we've seen a trend toward electricity market restructuring towards competitive wholesale markets. So moving away from this natural monopoly structure towards a competitive wholesale market, and that's what we're going to talk about next.